Hello everyone, this is Babamot. Welcome to another Homeworlds game review. This game is between John Cooper and Andy Looney. This is another video in my series where I am looking for a John Cooper victory. I realized after making the last video that while it was John Cooper's opponent who appeared to have left the game, technically all players decided to abandon the game, and so even in Board Game Arena's records, it did not go down as a victory. The biggest problem with looking for a John Cooper victory is that John mostly plays Andy Looney, who is a very strong Homeworlds player. So it's hard to find games where John Cooper wins, unfortunately. But I'm going to try again. In this game, John is going first, and John takes a green fortress with yellow ship, and Andy takes a yellow banker. Let's see what happens. John moves out to a small green star right away. That would seem to accelerate the green economy, where Andy already has a lead, but Andy declines to continue pursuing that advantage, trading for red right away. Andy might be a little paranoid playing John so much. John gets so aggressive that Andy might feel like he needs a red as quickly as possible. Oh, that's interesting. Andy thinking about trading right back for yellow. Okay, Andy changes his mind, builds that red instead. John builds the last of the small yellows. Andy, interesting, spreads out the reds to discover a large yellow star. So this is interesting, partly because it takes a large yellow out of the bank, and yellow's the color that John is most likely to get an advantage in. That's one less large ship that he's likely to get his hands on. Okay, John spreading out his yellows. Andy building the last of the small reds. So John, having moved to a blue star, might have traded for that small red if Andy hadn't just built it. But John instead is going to get to build a medium. I think John might want to build that at home. Yeah, build that at home so you can trade it for a red soon. Otherwise, John's going to get locked out of red. Okay, well, John... Yeah, that's all right. John builds a medium yellow, locking Andy out of the yellows, even at the medium level. And John will get a large yellow on his next turn unless Andy discovers that one too, which he does. Andy playing some keep away here. But even so, John can now trade the medium yellow for red. That does put a yellow back in the bank that Andy can trade his medium for. And only very briefly is that yellow ship going to be there. I'm sure Andy will move it away soon. And I don't think it's quite a good idea for John to sacrifice Y3 to blow up Andy's home star just this minute. Looks like, yeah, Andy moves a ship forward to get in position for it. But Andy avoids the overpopulation. Okay, so now John is interested in joining Andy in the green economy, but trades away another yellow that Andy is happy to pick up. John builds another green. Now, so this is good. This is good. Really good on John. Andy can't build another green without losing it to an overpopulation. John can sacrifice Y2, move in both of these greens. So Andy is, I call it a soft freeze out of greens. He's got the one, but he can't get any more. He'd have to go to another star. He could move one of these yellows, say move the medium yellow to a blue star and trade for green. That he might actually want to do that. In fact, I think he's just about too late now. I think maybe he should have done it last turn. Andy looking at getting a jump on the blues. John joins Andy in the blues, so Andy can't build any more here. Yeah, Andy has got to feel pretty uncomfortable having John's fleet parked just outside here. So Andy, similar thing here by discovering a large green star. Andy's keeping John from building up into larges more than he already will. Well, not that he can. The two colors that John's doing best on are yellow and green, and Andy is discovering lots of those large stars. So no extra large ships for John. John takes a little yellow instead. Andy gets a medium blue. And John's not going to want to build one of those mediums until that little blue's got out of there. Interesting. John going for the mothership exchange. Oh, and what's delicious about this? So after that exchange, they're honestly not all that different in material. We've got 3 smalls, 2 mediums, to 4 smalls, 3 mediums. But John is in a position to rebuild that Y3. Andy can't build the Y3 right now without losing the yellows he's got. They just get overpopulated. And Andy can't even discover that Y3 star with his remaining home ship because he'd lose. The only way Andy keeps John from discovering that Y3 star right now, I think, is to sacrifice Y2 to move one of his other ships, say the Y1, twice to get to the Y3 star. That's a really good exchange for John. Okay, what does Andy do? Okay, interesting. Oh, the Y2 sacrifice also plugs up the bank, so John doesn't get another large ship. And he moved the R2 out of his home world into this colony for a threat, and then brought a ship back home so that his home world isn't completely undefended. Okay, John ignoring the threat to his blue ship, threatening Andy's little yellow instead. But that little yellow can just escape. John building more red. Does Andy take that little blue? He does. John pushing forward the R2. That leaves John with no mediums even in his home world. But Andy can't get a medium there in one turn. And this little yellow can just run away, but it's good for John to spread out his reds anyhow. Andy doesn't have access to green anywhere that he's got a red, so John can keep building reds happily. Yeah, that's quite good. All right, Andy withdraws. And this medium red is now a Gilligan. He's trapped there, but it reduced the red concentration at his home, so John can build more red. Andy plugs up the bank, trading for a green. So now if John builds a medium red, Andy can sacrifice G2 and build 2 large reds, and Andy would be in a good position. So instead, John's going to trade away the R2 for green. Yeah, so John is now in a position where he could do a similar thing. He can leapfrog the medium red and get a large if necessary. Okay, Andy now pushing forward his little red. The main purpose of that seems to be to take a medium blue out of the bank so that larger ships will be available sooner for Andy to build. And in fact, if John doesn't do something about it now, like discovering that B3 as a star, Andy can leapfrog the medium blue with the G2 sacrifice, and Andy will have a large ship again. John looking just invading this colony. It's not bad in isolation, but Andy getting a large blue is going to hurt. Oh, but he doesn't do it. Andy just builds a medium blue instead. Andy could have leapfrogged and got a large. I think he should have done. John thinking about building the last medium. That leaves a large open for Andy to build. Okay, sacrificing the G2 lets John leapfrog the medium yellow to get a large of his own. Andy now has two larges he can build. He could even choose to build both of them. He could build the large blue and large yellow. The yellow is more pressing, since if he doesn't build it, John could. Yeah, so Andy just takes the one that wasn't going to get stolen away. And now John, I think, still should be trying to block that B3 build. Okay, well that's one way to do it, is trade for it. But now, well, I guess that's not so bad. I was going to say if Andy pushes forward one of his blues, then he's a Y3 sacrifice away from overpopulating both John's mothership and a blue star, but Andy doesn't have access to yellow in any of the systems where he's got a blue ship, so he'd have to sacrifice the Y1. That starts to be less attractive. And he makes the sacrifice, but to recall his R1 instead. It also... he discovers the Y3 as a star, so John can't build it, and the Y1 sacrifice, of course, also plugs up the bank, so it's doubly blocked, I guess. John just builds that Y1. No, he takes the R2. I think that's better. Yeah, if Andy sacrifices to leapfrog the R2 to build a large red, then John also gets to build a large red. Andy takes that little yellow instead. And John thinks it's time for a Y2 sacrifice. Interesting. Oh, he could move. He could move both of these yellows into Kobol for an overpopulation. I think that is probably a good choice. Now, John's got blue and Andy does not. Okay, or rather, sorry, John has a large blue, and Andy has no larges. I think John might want to just start marching this large blue across the galaxy, preparing to invade. Andy probably wants to get a large as soon as possible. Maybe should do the G3 sacrifice now? No, not so much. Just trading for yellow. I don't know about that. Okay, John starts his death march. Andy brings a red home. That seems strange to me. Oh, well, it saves him a turn. Well, it comes out the same, but now Andy can sacrifice the G2 to build a large at home rather than building it somewhere else and then moving it into his home. Okay. John invades what is this name? Perplanus colony. I could capture that little red, but really he's got his mind on invading Andy's home. Okay, Andy now I'm sure is going to build that. Okay, builds the. Okay, I was expecting him to put one of those reds in the Perplanus colony, but instead builds both reds at home, which is okay. John doesn't have enough yellow to reach. So John gets an additional large of his own. Andy trades out for a green. I think that's good. Andy's been low on green for a long time. Now, does John take that little red? He could capture it. I think that's a good choice. Oh gosh, sacrificing the B3. That seems pretty wild to me, but it would be nice for this large to be a color other than red, or at least for this colony to have some yellow or blue in it. Yeah, not worth the B3 sacrifice, though. John changes his mind. Sacrificing the Y1, no. Yeah, reverts back to the little red capture. I think that's the right call. Okay. Andy sacrificing G2 for 2 blue builds. Okay, emptying the blue bank. I think that's a pretty good choice. Andy's home doesn't actually have to be afraid of blue overpopulation anymore because there are not enough blues in John's possession or in the bank to overpopulate Andy's blue star, even if Andy leaves that B2 there. Okay, Andy again thinking about a B3 sacrifice. No, but changes his mind. Okay, building Y1. I kind of wish he had continued on to doing some of those trades. I'm curious what he had in mind. If it would have been better than I think. Andy trades blue for yellow, which puts a blue back in the bank. That's something John could potentially get his hands on. But decides to spread out the yellow instead. Yeah, more room for building yellow would be nice when there are a couple of large yellows close to being available for building. Andy trades more blue to the bank to get a green. He'd probably like to leapfrog the little yellow to build the large, even though it would give John the chance to build the other one. Okay, John getting aggressive again. Moving into this colony, yeah, the prime target. Andy sacrifices the Y2 to, oh, not evacuate both ships. Instead, to evacuate one ship and move the green into a new colony. I guess Andy's looking at that as an investment, reserving one of the large yellows for later. John, I don't like that very much. Moving R2 into this colony, Andy can just capture it with a little red sacrifice. And I don't think that leaves Andy's home dangerously vulnerable, even though he's only got one ship, and John has some red parked outside. John doesn't have enough red to overpopulate. I don't think there's any reason Andy should be afraid to capture that R2, so I think this is a poor move from John. Okay, John trades the big blue for big green, leaving John completely out of blue. Boy, that's an interesting looking bank. One piece each in 3 sizes, 3 colors. Looks like a stoplight. All right, what does Andy pick? Sacrifices little blue to trade for green. Why the sacrifice, though? Where was that Oh, that little blue was in Cardassia where it could have been captured. Okay, that's a good reason to sacrifice it. Okay, what is John's next play? John's got a big lead in red. He might want to keep building up the red. He's got a smaller lead in, well, actually, I guess it's technically a bigger lead in yellow in some ways, since Andy can't build yellow without sacrifice. John builds green. Okay, John's got a factory. Andy builds and has a factory. Ooh, John would love to have a larger yellow. John's close to being able to move in a couple of greens to overpopulate Andy's mothership, and then move in his own large ship for an imminent win. Oh, John somehow thinks it's time to go right now. Oh, I guess that could work. So Andy's really got to capture this invading green. or else John will capture everything. Oh, I guess he doesn't have to. He could build and overpopulate it himself. But this move by Andy doesn't work. Andy could sacrifice this G2 to rebuild it in Andy's home and get another free build. But either way, Andy's out of greens. Yeah, Andy's definitely in trouble here. Yeah, Andy doesn't see a way out. John's just going to capture everything. Okay. Yep. Andy reinforces as best he can, but into a catastrophe. Okay, wow. Well, some really good plays from John there, and a true John Cooper victory this time. Well played by both. Some especially clever moves from John that time, I thought. Really good on him for calculating out that invasion would work. And I can't remember exactly what they were, but I remember a couple of other times that I expressed appreciation and admiration for John's choices. All right, well, that's it for now. Thanks for watching.